Section 3, Swyk 2. Find the measure of the angle in the standard position. So they've given me this random angle drawn, and I got to figure out where the heck it is on the circle. And they didn't exactly draw me a nice circle to look at. They kind of drew the angle on the inside. For instance, if you look at my circle on the right here, I tried to mimic what they did. So if you have an actual circle, then they extended that line out to the edge of the circle, and then they drew this for you right here. So, and then they said, hey, what's the angle? Well, we do know that that's 0, 90, 180, 270, so we know it's past 270 degrees. We know that the x value is radical 3 over 2. So it's the third one from the left. We know the y value is negative 1/2, so it's the first one down. This looks like a 30-degree angle inside the triangle. So you're saying to me that we're 30 degrees short of 360? That's right, folks. We are at 330 degrees. 330 degrees. Just 30 degrees shy of a whole circle. Okay, so there's some questions coming like this one. Hey, look, it's got the whole unit circle kind of mapped out. But I cannot stand, and I am going to emphasize this a lot, especially if you're going on to trig next year. Do not sit there and say to me, oh, I've got to memorize the unit circle with all these coordinates around it. You'll forget it. You will not know what's going on. Sorry, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a cat in the window. Now it's making a weird noise. I think scraping along the side of the window. Sorry, I digress. But you cannot sit there and look at this and say to me, oh, I got to memorize the whole thing. You know why? Because a lot of kids will forget it as soon as they possibly can. And then it's going to come up again and be like, oh, I got to rememorize the whole thing. No, you don't. You need to understand when you look at this thing, you need to be able to look at it and say, now you can see that this triangle has, or this particular circle has been broken up into pi over 6 jumps, or 30-degree jumps. But you need to understand, okay, that, this is an x value of 1/2. This is an x value of radical 2 over 2. This is an x value of radical 3 over 2. This is an x value of positive 1. They go in order, or whichever direction you're going, whether it's the x or the y, right? Because we can do the same thing there. 1/2, radical 2 over 2, radical 3 over 2, and at the top 1. Now, you might say to me, where are these numbers coming from? Well, keep in mind that we can always go back to 30, 60, 90 right triangles, right? Which we studied back at the beginning of this particular, or maybe it was last week. It's probably last week. And we can say to ourselves, okay, if the hypotenuse is 1, how do we go to the short leg? We cut it in half. Okay, so that's half. How do we go from the short leg to the long leg? Oh, we multiply by radical 3. Well, if you take 1/2 and multiply by radical 3, you get radical 3 over 2. Now, I don't know if that's an aha moment where you're like, oh, it's just a 30, 60, 90 right triangle? Yes. All these things are, I'm trying to, show you as many different pieces of the pie as we possibly can get. You're probably like, well, what the heck is going on with this 45, 45, 90 right here, the green one? Well, remember, hypotenuse is always 1. How do you go from the hypotenuse of a 45, 45, 90 back to one of the legs? You divide by radical 2. Let me just show you what happens when you divide 1 by radical 2. Looks like that. But, math teachers hate seeing it like that. I personally don't mind. But Math Excel will, so it forces you to rationalize it. And what do? You get radical 2 over 2. Hey, that's the same leg here as it is here. There's your x and your y value. Everything is based upon the 30, 60, 90 or the 45, 45, 90. And you're probably like, well, wait a sec. Well, what about the 60 degree? Guess what kind of triangle that is? 30, 60, 90. Same thing as the red one. It's just been flipped. Now, when you start getting at the axes, like here at pi over 2, there's no triangle, folks. It's 1 unit above the origin. It's the coordinate 0, 1, which is what we're dealing with in this particular question, right? They're asking me for the y value. Sine is the y value at the top of the circle, and the y value at the top of the circle is a 1. Nothing very complicated about that question. Okay? Now they ask me for the x value, cosine of pi over 2. X value is 0. Done. There's nothing more to that question, folks. You're just looking for the x value. You have to find the location on the circle, and then you have to identify. Now, okay, so first we start, this one starts out with cosecant. Cosecant. Now, you might not be good at jumping around the circle at pi over 3 jumps. When I did my graphs on the circle and we jumped around, like we jumped around in 30-degree jumps, we jumped around 45. I never jumped around in 60s. You can do that. You can do 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, 3 pi over 3, 4 pi over 3, 5 pi over 3, 6 pi over 3. But if you are not comfortable trying that, I would suggest changing it to pi over 6s. So notice how I changed the question. I changed it to cosecant 8 pi over 6. All I did was double the top and bottom of the angle because it's the same angle. Now, looking at my circle, right, that they've got for me, I've got 0, 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6. So now I know where I'm at, and they are looking for cosecant goes with the sine, right? Goes with the sine, which is a y value. And we can tell that the y value at that spot is negative radical 3 over 2. So I want the reciprocal, which means I flip it over. Negative 2 over radical 3. We rationalize the top and the bottom. Okay, so we flipped it over. Now we're rationalizing it, and we get nothing cancels out this time. It's just negative 2 radical 3 over 3. Final answer. No, I'm not going to write it down again because I don't feel like it. I know. So, secant. Haven't done a lot with secant, but secant is a reciprocal of cosine, right? Remember, it starts with the opposite letter. So, I'm always going to tell you, find the cosine of 2 pi over 3. If you are not comfortable with jumping around in pi over 3 increments, then change it to pi over 6, right? 2 pi over 3 is the same thing as 4 pi over 6. You just multiply the top and bottom by 2. A lot of kids like that, like to use that strategy so that they can sit there and say, okay, we got 0, we got 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6. So now we know where we're at. We're looking for a cosine. Remember, that's the x value, which is negative 1/2. Okay? But we want to flip it over, right? So pretty easy, negative 2. Nothing complicated about that. But anyway, this will get easier. It always will get easier the second time you see it. So it might be difficult this year, but I'm telling you, next year it'll be so much nicer for you. Anyway, talk to you later. Bye.